Welcome to episode 3 of Myths and Monsters. It is actually episode 17.5, I believe. And today it's the end of the month, and so this is your special bonus. And we're going to talk about Djinn and Tulpa today.
Yes.
Or I started last time, you start this time.
Alrighty. So I decided to do Djinn because it's just been nagging me lately. Sorry, my cat is bumping my arm. And so like every time we've talked about, what are we going to do next? Djinn has just been the one that's popped into my head without reason. So I figured I'd go ahead and do it. So Djinn is an Arabic collective noun deriving from the Semitic root whose primary meaning is to hide or to conceal. Hi, Betty. Some authors interpret the word to mean literally, beings that are concealed from the senses. It's been anglicized and romanized, so it's been taken into different cultures, which is where, genies come from. Like our modern ideal of a genie is the more anglicized version. And they're supernatural creatures in early pre-Islamic, Arabian, and later Islamic mythology and theology. But they have like a more broad meaning of like spirits or demons, depending on what source you're going from. So like humans, they're created with something called fitra. And basically this means they're neither born as believers or unbelievers, but their attitudes kind of determine whether or not they accept God's guidance. And that's basically what fitra is. So they're more like on the human side with that kind of thing.
Okay.
Jinn are neither innately evil or innately good. So Islam was able to adapt spirits from other religions during its expansion. So basically it just like they're able to, Jinn are across cultures just because they're so ambiguous.
Okay.
Jinn are not strictly an Islamic concept. They may represent several pagan beliefs integrated into Islam. Some scholars of the Middle East hold that they originated as malevolent spirits residing in deserts and unclean places, and they often take the form of different animals.
Interesting. Unclean places.
Yeah, which was interesting because, I've heard personally, and I'll get to it later in this too, that they are spirits of like air and fire. But I've never heard that they're spirits of unclean places. So I thought that was like super interesting.
It's interesting.
Let's see here. Others hold that they were originally pagan nature deities who gradually became marginalized as other deities took great importance. So more to deal with nature, like I've heard before, like the wind and the fire kind of thing. According to common Arabian beliefs, soothsayers, pre-Islamic philosophers, and poets were inspired by the Jinn. Jinn had been worshipped by many Arabs during the pre-Islamic period, but unlike gods, Jinn were not regarded as immortal, which I thought was interesting because I don't know, I guess in my head they've always been like, these spirits that are obviously like kind of immortal, but
yeah.
So it was interesting to see that they were considered not immortal.
Okay.
However, Djinn were also feared and thought to be responsible for causing various diseases and mental illnesses, which I found on several sources. Like I found everywhere that they were thought to, which I had never heard before. So I thought that was really interesting. Djinn are also assumed to appear in the shape of various animals, which I've mentioned, such as scorpions, cats, and owls, and also the black dogs, which if you know anything about black dog mythology, which, I wouldn't mind covering that in the future, they're more like omens of death, kind of. They're more of a negative connotation to them. And then and then this is where I get to where they're more related to nature. So the Djinn are related to the wind and may appear in mists and sandstorms, which is more along the lines of what I have heard.
Yeah, that's what I always thought.
Yeah, that's what, because I always imagine them in more like deserty areas, like dry areas, and maybe that's because of Aladdin. I don't know.
That's what I was about to say. Aladdin is shaped the American mind, so that could be our issue.
Yeah, exactly. So some say that they view the Djinn as shadowy ghosts with no individual structure. They're said to dwell in conceivable inanimate objects, so like lamps, like the one in Aladdin, stones, trees, and ruins, underneath the earth, in the air, and also in fire, which is more, again along the lines of what I've heard.
Okay.
A common characteristic of the Djinn is their lack of individuality, however. They can gain individuality by materializing in human form. So not only can they appear as animals, they can also appear to be more human. But most of the time, like they end up doing kind of a mixture. So they kind of have some human qualities with animal traits, and so they tend to be more monstrous, like monstrosities, as opposed to like human or beautiful or whatever, you know?
I picture a centaur for some reason.
Interesting. I don't
Or
think
the,
centaurs are genies.
I don't think so either. Or the Sphinx, with the cat with the human face. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I guess in my head I kind of picture, which is Greek, it's completely different, but is the Minotaur.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, completely different culture, but that's like immediately what popped into my head. So yeah, they tend to be monstrous and anthropomorphized creatures with body parts from different animals or humans with animal traits, is how they're often depicted, which is funny because, again, because of Aladdin, I feel like I picture them more as like these spirits that are like more amorphous, like one of the other descriptions that we have, where they're just kind of part of the air or part of the fire.
Yeah, I've always associated them with wispy air, the genie that comes out of the bottle in the smoke and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's, and like they don't have legs and they're just kind of
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
That's more along the lines of what I picture too, which I haven't seen. I want to see the live action Aladdin. It's a little bit.
I haven't seen it either. Yeah.
I want to. I've heard it's good. Oh, so witchcraft is often associated with Djinn too, like especially around like Middle East and Middle Eastern mythology. It's said that a sorcerer can summon a Djinn and force him to perform orders, and they can be sent after a chosen person for demonic possession, which I thought was super interesting because I've always associated genies with like wishes and like that kind of thing. And this sounds more like the stereotypical a witch summons a demon and sends them on tasks kind of.
Yeah.
So I thought that was super neat because I've seen that used in urban fantasy. The witch summons a demon, like what's that series? The Kim Harrison, the Hollows series.
Mm-hmm.
She does that where she summons demons, and once you have that demon, you send them to go and do whatever. So I thought it was really interesting relating that to Djinn.
Yeah.
And then Djinn are also regarded as assistants of soothsayers, which are, they reveal information about the past and present. They're more like fortune tellers. And the reason for that is that Djinn can be a source of information with this because they live for so long. They outlive humans and they have all this, knowledge about the past and everything. So they help soothsayers predict the future.
I've already got little ideas going in my head for some new stories using Djinn. That's interesting.
Isn't it super cool? Because I feel like, especially in your freaking fairies series, you could do something with Djinn. I'm sure junkie Djinn. I don't know. That's horrible. Probably not.
Junkie Djinn.
Don't take my advice on this. Another way. Oh, so Djinn can also be subjugated not only by summoning, but if you put a needle into their skin or in their dresses or like their clothing. They're afraid of iron. So if you put a needle of iron into their skin or dresses, they can't take it out themselves because they're afraid of it. And so therefore you have them under your control.
Interesting.
Which I thought that was pretty neat. Because you hear all the time the Fae are afraid of iron and, all kinds of different magical creatures are afraid of iron. So I thought it was really interesting that it was also part of this mythology.
That's neat. Yeah.
So they're often depicted as genies due to being westernized, and they're also known to grant wishes. So then I have a few examples of where they show up in pop culture.
Okay.
So I have been on a Charmed binge lately. So, if you don't know Charmed, it's the three witch sisters, and they fight demons and all that. And
are you watching the old version or the new version?
Oh, the old version. Old version's classic. Gotta watch the old version.
Yeah, I agree.
I haven't actually tried the new version, so I'll have to check it out.
It's pretty good too. It's good too.
Okay.
But nice. I'm spoiled by the original. Nothing will ever come close to the original.
Me too. Especially, I grew up on it. It was live as I was growing up, so I grew up with it. Mm-hmm. And so I think it would be hard for me to completely switch over to being like, yes, this new Charmed is great, and I'm sure it is, but there's always going to be like
a good job of not trying to be exactly the same. Because we would all be disappointed because nothing can ever. So they've done a decent job of making it its own show. So.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I'll have to look at it. But I'm on season 6 now, and there were 2 episodes of Genies so far. And
really, I don't remember any Genies in the Charmed. It's been a long time.
Yeah, true. There was one in season 3, and it ended up having, Prue got killed. They're known as tricksters, which I've covered in one of our
Right.
past myth and legends episodes. And so, it got Prue killed, and he regretted it, and then he ended up getting set free. And then Phoebe got turned into a genie in one episode, which is pretty funny.
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, no, it was good. They were good. There's also a half Djinn in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I don't remember. I've read that book, but I haven't read it since like elementary school.
A long time ago.
Yeah, but apparently there's a half Djinn in that, which I thought was pretty cool. Obviously Disney's version of Aladdin, which is based on the story of Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp.
Mm-hmm.
There's a story of the Djinn in the 1001 Nights stories with the fisherman and the genie. Which is one that I had to read in like middle school,
Yeah.
look it up for lit class and all that. So I remember having to read that one. Apparently there's a Djinn in Doctor Who, which I haven't seen, but I thought it was interesting that they use it.
I have not watched, okay, I'm going to get crucified. I haven't watched any Doctor Who ever, so I need to do that.
Well, I'll take it up a notch and say that I was not a fan of it, but
really?
that's just personal taste.
Oh,
there was
wow.
something about it that I was not a huge fan of it. So yeah, not to say that it's bad. I've got tons of friends who love it. There was just something about it that didn't click with me. So
interesting. Yeah, I've never watched any of them, so I don't know if I'll love it or hate it, or I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, maybe I should give it another go. It's kind of like one of those things where it's like, oh, I picked up one thing and didn't really like it, and then pick it up again later, and maybe I'll love it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, because there are so many things about Doctor Who that you see references to, and it looks so good. So maybe I just need to cast like a specific doctor or something. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
And then the last one that I have is there is a Djinn in The Witcher. So
I just watched The Witcher.
What? I don't know.
Witcher.
I'm not sure if it's in the Netflix show or if it will be in a future season.
Because it was in the game.
It is in the game, and it is in the books.
It may be. I've binged so many things being in quarantine that they're all running together. I know I loved The Witcher, but I don't remember all the details in it. No,
and where it ends up, I don't think, because I've seen the show too, and I've also played The Witcher 3 game, and it is in The Witcher 3 game. And it's in the backstory of the Witcher 3 game. So like before this game is when it showed up.
And then you got the books for Christmas. Have you read them yet?
I have not yet.
Okay.
I need to, but I'm pretty sure that the Djinn is in that as well.
Okay.
Because it's a major plot point between the Witcher and Yennefer, the sorceress chick. So
interesting.
Yeah, so that's Djinn, which there was a lot of nitty gritty detail that I could have gone into, and I didn't want to delve that deep into it.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of information about them out there, and I was really interested in like, how they came to be, what they look like, the things they can do, what do people think of them, kind of thing. So that's more along the lines of what I covered.
That has really sparked all kinds of ideas for me. I mean, you could make the Djinn the main character. You could make the Djinn a rock that you throw it at your main character. I mean, there's so many things. And I love the trickster aspect, which you covered in the last myth and monster thing.
Yeah.
Tricksters are a lot of fun where they're tricky and you have to be careful what you ask for.
Yes.
So interesting. Well, I have done the Tulpa.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I have heard things about this, and I've had like book ideas in the past about it, but just like I have been unsure about kind of how to go about using them in urban fantasy. So like I'm really interested to hear what you got to say.
It is quite fascinating. I had only heard a little bit, and I'll tell you why later because I'm going to get into examples. But a tulpa is basically an independent entity created by belief. That is a very simple explanation for it. The concept it's a concept of mysticism and paranormal, where a being or object is created through spiritual or mental powers.
Yeah.
It's a thought form. It's something formed completely from thoughts, but it becomes tangible. It was adapted by 20th century theosophists from the Tibetan Spurlpa, which means emanation or manifestation. So it used to be thought of as like monks using it to control, themselves, control their own bodies, control their thoughts, and monks through meditation were thought to make things real. So that you think about meditation and that focused energy that goes into meditation, and that's what they think is required to go from thought to physical.
Okay.
Also, think of the imaginary friend concept. Children who have imaginary friends and they think their friends are real. We as adults don't see them.
Right.
On an individual level, you create a tulpa by imagining the thing in your head, treating it as a person, giving it attention and belief, and then it can grow into a sentient being independent of the person creating it.
Wow.
Yeah, which I had only heard of it as a group thing. I had never heard of it as an individual thing.
Yeah, I don't think I have either. I think I've always heard of it as a group thing, like it's a mass belief, and because there is so much belief by so many people, it becomes a tangible thing.
And on the individual level, I mean, think about it. This has got huge potential for urban fantasy. Think of a child who was abused so badly that they created this friend to help them, and it becomes this tangible thing, and it could go and take revenge on whoever is abusing. So many thoughts of what to do with this on an urban fantasy level.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a gradual process that takes shape over time. It could take months or even years to collect enough psychic energy to manifest, unless it's done on a group level, which is the way I've always thought about it. On the scale in today's world, there's tulpas in all kinds of past cultures. But in today's world, it's really spread because of internet and email and social media and all of that.
Right.
Urban legends are widely disseminated, unproven stories of unusual events that evoke a strong feeling, emotional response, such as fear, shock, or revulsion.
Yeah.
And when you spread that through the internet and you have enough people fearing this story that you've heard, this urban legend, the idea is that it can become a tulpa, become a real thing.
I feel like I've seen or heard of movies that have done this already, or maybe shows or something. I'm imagining that you're going to get into.
I will. There's a lot of pop culture references. I mean, I didn't know. I just liked the idea of it, and I really, really enjoyed researching this. It's fascinating.
Yeah. No, it's super cool.
The characteristics of a tulpa. At first, it starts appearing like a ghost haunting with knocks and shadows and footsteps. That's as it's starting to manifest. That causes the fear and the emotion then to reinforce itself because you're now really afraid of it and you're really believing in it. And so then it becomes more and more real. It's not a ghost, so you don't have the cold spots, you don't have the EMF changes, you don't have the EVP, that kind of thing. Once it manifests, it becomes real. It's solid, it can block light, it can pick up objects. Allegedly, they say it can teleport wherever the creator wants it to go. Which is interesting.
So, yeah. Especially, I feel like that's especially interesting because, you mentioned that it could take years to get this psychic energy. So how do you determine, if it takes that much time to make a tulpa individually, how do you determine where you want it to go, or like give it direction kind of thing? Interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Let's see. In individual cases, like the imaginary friend, they're generally not dangerous. They exist only for the person who created them. But if you create one from negative emotions, it could turn on its maker and it can kill other people for its maker, or it could kill its maker.
Right.
Examples of tulpa. The most famous one is Slender Man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Slender Man is a man with extremely long, slender arms and legs. Typically wears a black suit, a hat of some kind. It might be a fedora, it might be a top hat, the bowler, usually a scarf and tie. Very pale, slightly ghostly looking. He generally is very polite. He keeps his hands like behind his back as he walks, I guess in a non-threatening type
Yeah, and he doesn't have a
pose.
face. Did you mention that too? Because he
That
doesn't.
some say it doesn't have a face. Some say it's a face wrapped in something.
It's creepy.
It appears to float rather than walk, which makes sense because it's got these gangly arms and legs, which would make it hard to move.
I
And
don't
so it
like
kind
that.
of floats, which makes me think of Buffy, the Hush one
Ooh,
with the,
so good.
I
Yeah,
know that was such a good show, but the way they glide, that was so creepy. But that's
yeah.
how I picture Slender Man. Reportedly, he likes the woods in suburban areas. He's often seen in large groups of children. It's
Mhm.
supposedly that's what he likes. They don't know if he eats them or just takes them somewhere, but he's got this fascination with children.
Yeah.
And he seems unconcerned with being seen in the daytime or being photographed. Um, I read parts of this book. It's called The Slender Man Mysteries: An Internet Urban Legend Comes to Life. It's by Nick Redfern. And he talked about how the Slender Man became, I see your kitty cat.
He's taking my seat.
Oh, he's so cute. How Slender Man came to be. Apparently, there was a morning show called Coast to Coast AM, which was kind of a paranormal show. And people called in and were talking about having seen the Slender Man. And that was the point where the Slender Man urban legend shifted to a more sinister belief.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
they think it's because the people calling in created this worldwide or nationwide fear, which then strengthened the tulpa into something more than what it was.
Right.
Um, the only thing that's important is that the audience believed that what they were hearing was true. And
Well,
that's,
because I've seen a documentary on Slender Man about these, the two little girls who thought that one of them said that she saw Slender Man and he told her, oh, you need to kill your friend. And so she tried to.
did. Yeah. Well,
Um,
yeah.
she tried. Yeah, I think the girl lived, but she had been stabbed by like 12 times or something like that. But like it was because Slender Man told that girl to do it and she 100% believed it.
Yeah.
And it was because it became such a huge internet sensation. Yeah, Slenderman is really interesting, and I never thought of him as a tulpa. Like, it makes sense now that you're talking
Yep.
about it, but I never really considered it that way before.
Yeah. He is considered the epitome of a tulpa in today's society, the Slender Man.
So interesting.
Puka Lives, which I have not seen. It's a Hulu in the dark movie. They do
Yeah.
the movie series of the horror movies. Puka Lives is apparently a tulpa. It plays around with the idea of a tulpa. There's a virtual puka challenge that brings this vengeful tulpa to life. And so what it really makes you think about is the power of mob mentality.
Yeah.
How viral things can go on the internet and how much power that has, not necessarily in supernatural things, but in general.
Right.
Just something can take off on the internet and it can ruin somebody or it can make somebody.
Yeah. 100%.
So it is very interesting to think of tulpa on this widespread level.
Yeah.
And then this is the one that why I thought about tulpa and what made me know about it is the supernatural episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's season 1, episode 17, Hell House. And in that episode, there was an urban legend about Mordecai Murdoch. And it was made up by these people who had their own little website. This guy and his cousin, they had a website that they told scary stories. And so they accidentally created this tulpa. they spread this rumor that during the Depression, Mordecai was a farmer and he had his 6 daughters, and the crops were failing and they were starving to death. And he thought that it would be better to kill them quickly than to have them starve over time. So he killed all 6 of his daughters and then hung himself. And the urban legend was that anybody that went to that house, any woman that went to the house, would be found hanging. So they made it up, but they put it on their little, kind of like creepypasta website.
Right.
And it went viral and created a tulpa of Mordecai Murdoch. He came to life. And what was interesting in that story was the way Dean and Sam hoped to defeat him was for that same website to post about a weakness. He's afraid of guns.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, yeah, that will spread and then he'll be weak and we can go in and kill him. Well, they go to the house expecting to be able to kill him, and the internet had crashed, and so it never got disseminated, and they ended up having to burn the house down and hope that the spirit was confined to that area, and that there would be no reason for anybody to go there ever again because it had been burned down.
That's right.
But that's
season 1 of Supernatural was something else. It was so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, season 1 to me was the best of all.
Mm-hmm.
Another urban legend that could be considered a tulpa is Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you go into a mirror, you turn off the lights, you have a candle, and you chant Bloody Mary, and there's a different number of times. Sometimes it says 3, sometimes it says 13,
Mm-hmm.
and Bloody Mary will supposedly appear. You chant her name. Mary is said to be a witch who was executed 100 years ago for applying the black arts, or a woman in modern times who died in a local car accident in which her face was hideously mutilated. And if it's that one, she comes through and scratches your face from the mirror. You see her behind you in the mirror.
Yeah.
I tried to find real life examples of people claiming to have seen Bloody Mary. And this lady said, a friend of mine said that her roommate tried this and ran screaming from the bathroom. She was shaking and appeared genuinely terrified and refused to talk about the incident. But those around her, when she came out, noticed that she had that her clenched fingers were covered in blood.
Yikes.
But think about the slumber parties when you're a little kid and everybody goes and they're like, oh, let's go in the bathroom and chant Bloody Mary. I mean, that kind of belief is exactly what they think a tulpa comes from.
Right.
So you think of things like Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, fairies, demons, angels, Yeti, all of those could theoretically be tulpas that have been brought about because people believe in them.
Yeah.
So
that's so interesting to think about.
It really is. The way that you supposedly defeat a tulpa is the way Sam and Dean tried to, was to change the belief, the mass belief. If enough people believe that it's no longer there or that it's a joke or whatever, it will kill it.
Yeah.
Or like Sam and Dean tried to make it have a weakness that could then be used to kill it. Or supposedly you can kill the creator of it, which if it's mass, how do you do that? Other than, change their thoughts on it. But and who wants to kill the little kid who made the imaginary friend? I mean,
right, exactly. And also, like, what if the tulpa is the one who kills its creator,
That's true too. But see, then that doesn't make any sense. If the creator dies and it kills the tulpa, then the tulpa would never want to kill its creator because that would logically kill itself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. There are people out there trying actively to create tulpas. There is a whole community.
Have you read any success stories?
Reddit, you should go look at the Reddit thread. Some of it's crazy. I couldn't really find anything that I wanted to share that made sense enough for me to say, oh yeah, this was really interesting. But there are Reddit threads about it, people trying to create tulpas, kids who want help with their homework.
Yeah.
That was one I read. I want this tulpa to help me with my homework, and I really need it, and I'm going to think really hard, and it's going to come to life and help me.
Sure.
But things like there was one girl that said that she had a, a really good dream, but she couldn't remember it when she woke up, and she was able to ask her tulpa to help her remember it, and it helped her.
I
Because
wonder,
it's,
that's like, psychological, I feel like. And I mean, but maybe that's the point, is you can also.
yeah, there's a lot of debate as to whether the thought of tulpas is really a person with identity disorder, dissociative identity disorder,
Yeah.
or schizophrenia, because it really is the people talking in your head. You're talking to this thing, and then it becomes manifested outside of your body, but no one else can see it necessarily but you. But sometimes people
Right.
can see it. Depends on what you read. But the idea of a tulpa has huge possibilities for urban fantasy.
Oh yeah, I could see it being the basis of a magical system.
Me too.
That'd be fun to write.
An entire magical system based on belief.
Hmm.
I
Which
mean,
I know that there are things that are similar to that, but I don't know that they. I don't know that it's specifically from the idea of tulpas, but I know that there are stories and books and stuff out there that are, their magical system is based on belief, and you have to believe it. You have to have the willpower and the intent in order to produce magic.
think of the movie The Skeleton Key.
Yeah. Oh
Oh
yeah.
my God, such a great movie.
That's a good one.
And belief was a huge part of
Yeah.
that system. So yeah, interesting. But
Super
I mean, I could
interesting.
see, trying to, you've got a form of magic that takes on form of whatever a person believes.
Right.
And how do you control that? If they believe that someone's going to get in a car and have an accident and that happens, so then you're trying to have a society that's trying to suppress people that can do that. And I can't see that would be any good, because you try to suppress someone believing in something, they're going to believe in it more.
Right.
All kinds of ideas for
Yeah,
both of these. I thought the Djinn was great too.
Yeah.
Love that.
Super neat. Yeah, this is an interesting episode, because it did get me thinking a lot about, how can I use this in an urban fantasy? No, super neat. Also, what kept coming to mind as you were talking about tulpas and changing belief systems and all of that in order to defeat them, Tinkerbell is kind of like a tulpa.
She is. There's actually something called the Tinkerbell syndrome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and part of that was because in Peter Pan, where she sprinkles the fairy dust on the girl Wendy,
Yeah.
and Wendy can suddenly fly. That is thought to, in analytical terms, have been her believing in herself, then becoming able to do something, as opposed to really magic fairy dust.
Right.
But that there is something called the Tinkerbell syndrome.
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
Super neat. Super cool.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. We hope you enjoyed the bonus episode. We will post it. It'll on the last day of the month, and every last day of every month we'll have new monsters. If you have monsters and myths you want us to talk about and research, let us know. We'd be glad to do it. Anything that you're thinking of that you're maybe wanting to work on in your urban fantasy, and you want to hear some ideas about it, we'll be glad to do that for you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.